and welcome to Worst Quality Crab, a podcast of Asian American stories and recipes from best quality hearts. I'm your host, Freesia Lee. Joining me, as always, is my husband and producer, Sam.
Hello.
We are delighted to have our guest this episode. She's kind of San Francisco Chinese restaurant royalty, I would say. Chef and co-founder of Fang restaurant here in San Francisco, TV personality, star of Food Network's Chef Dynasty, House of Fang, and now author, House of Nanking, family recipes from San Francisco's favorite Chinese restaurant, none other than Kathy Fang herself. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Freesia and Samson. Thank you for having me here.
We're so glad to have you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm very busy these days with this book, but I'm so excited.
I bet. Honestly, this book is gorgeous. Like, we're going to talk about the book, obviously, and food, but if I could just gush at you and the book for a moment.
Please.
It's so beautiful. And I was talking to Sam about this earlier. Like, I don't know if I am evolving in my cookbook appreciation or cookbooks are evolving in their sort of, production and beauty, or I'm just reading more cookbooks that like reflect what I care about and like what I relate to. But it's so beautiful to look at this book and like see things that, one, photographs are beautiful, but two, like they feel familiar and comfortable and representative, and like we want to eat them all. We did a bad job of looking at the book before we ate lunch. It's such a gorgeous book, and reading the stories from you and your dad, it really warms my heart.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I feel like it's a little of everything that you said, everything that you're feeling from the book. Though those were things that I feel we were very intentional in when it came to producing this book, right? We wanted there to be dishes that make you think of maybe your upbringing at some point. We wanted the stories to feel very relatable, but we also wanted, the whole family aspect to play through, because at the end of the day, House of Nanking is a family business. It's between my mom and my dad who opened it, but I grew up there, and now it's all three of us running these two restaurants together. And I think that sometimes people kind of forget what all of that is behind all the craziness of stepping into House of Nanking. People just know of it as this really busy restaurant with long lines, with really curt service. It's not sometimes rude. It's loud. It's messy, and people think, oh, incredible meals. But that's kind of as far as it goes, right? People sometimes still don't even realize, like, oh, my mom's actually there every day. My dad still works every single day. And so I really wanted to share every aspect of the restaurant to people so that they realize, what does it take to put a plate of food in front of you in a little institution like this that's been churning for the last 38 years.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to spoil too much in the book, but there is a part where you mention, or I guess your dad's sort of strategy for cooking over a single wok is just to tell people what they want. And that was born out of like logistics. And I was like, that's so brilliant.
Yeah. Out of logistics, necessity, like thinking on your feet. What am I going to do? How am I going to solve this problem? I feel like a lot of times when you're a really small business and you're not working with very much money, you have to be creative, right? You have to think of ways to survive. And sometimes the best ideas can come from that. Sometimes it's a little overwhelming when you've got extra time, I don't think people have extra money, but it's just like, when you've got a little bit of too much, sometimes it's actually hard to really focus on what really matters. So, we got very lucky with all of that too, I'd say.
Yeah. Okay, so we could talk about any dish in the book, really, but there's a couple that are very personal to your family and one that you wanted to sort of start off with as a jumping point for the show and so to talk about the rest of the cookbook.
Yeah. So, I feel like this question gets asked a lot. People will say, what's your favorite recipe out of the cookbook? And it's really hard to choose because, there's essentially like over 30 years of food in there that we've accumulated from both, my grandmother's best dishes to my dad's to like the heavy hitters at House of Nanking. And I had to pick all the dishes that I felt had all these vivid memories attached to it. And what was it like for me growing up in the home, and what were those home dishes like? But when it really comes down to trying to pick one, I feel like there is one recipe in there, And it's probably one of the simplest recipes and cheapest recipe in the book that I feel sort of this has to be the dish of the book, actually. And it's because of the backstory. And so the dish is called scrappy noodles, right? And it sounds kind of like interesting. Okay, scrappy noodles. And the story is about my dad back in Shanghai. He would always go and visit this really famous pork chop shop. It's like a little stand and smells incredible and amazing. And he spent a lot of time just watching this guy cook. And he noticed that he would actually get all these, they're kind of like tempura bits, right? Like little bits that you get from frying something that he would scoop out of that fryer and he'd throw it aside. It gets discarded. Mm-hmm. And so he thought, wow, that's like kind of a waste. There's so much flavor in that. And at the time, there were food shortages in China. And so he had 4 other siblings. The family was always trying to find ways to make food for everybody and be able to feed them. Like there's 3 growing boys, 2 sisters, and so oftentimes they would have meals that didn't have any meat in it. And they would be hungry a lot. Mm-hmm. And so he was very genius in thinking, I can actually ask this guy for these scraps. And said, hey, instead of throwing it away, will you give it to me? And the guy was kind of like, why would you want this? This is not good for you kind of thing. This is trash. And he's like, don't worry about it. If you're willing to just save it up and give it to me, I'll come and pick it up kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So he arranged this thing where he would take it back home and it became like gold to them because they were able to put it into their wonton fillings and it would have this substitute of feeling like you had pork in it because it's essentially like fried pork lard kind of thing and these crispy bits. And then he used it to put on top of noodles because at the time they wouldn't have meat. There would be like nothing. It would be like soy sauce, MSG, some sesame oil. But then once they put the breadcrumbs, they call it breadcrumbs, but it's not really breadcrumbs, these bits in there, it gave them texture. It gave them pork flavor. It just amped up the dish. Mm-hmm. And it cost them nothing. And so I actually, when I heard about that, I was just kind of amazed by how thoughtful my dad was when it came to just thinking on his feet. And I think that is a part of House of Nanking's success, right? Like my dad is just super observant and he finds ways to be creative with dishes, to service, to logistics and all of that. And I grew up in that restaurant observing that. And so obviously, my dad doesn't make that dish anymore. We're not saving scraps. That's not how we're like making our food at House of Nanking, so don't worry.
No, but it looks great though. Like the picture is beautiful. I would eat this.
And so, yes. So I actually created this dish as an homage to that story. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we don't have these scraps laying around. I made a version of it. I created a recipe around using breadcrumbs that you can purchase at the store. And I thought about kind of like those flavors that my dad described to me. There's no pork lard or anything in there. It's frying up those breadcrumbs so it would taste kind of like what he's talking about. Because the marinade for the pork at the time had soy sauce, it had sugar, it had wine. So it was just very flavorful. So I created this dish in honor of like that story that he told me. And it's actually really delicious. Like it's just crispy breadcrumbs with lots of flavor that you toss into noodles. It gives you texture and it like doesn't cost you really very much at all. And so I feel like that's a very important message in the book. And that kind of gets weaved throughout is that a lot of these recipes, in fact, most of these recipes are very simple, like homey dishes. A lot of them are born out of necessity, frugality, even for House of Nanking. You'll see a lot of these dishes are actually quite simple. There's not a lot of ingredients because they had a very small kitchen, very small fridge space. So they don't have the luxury of having 30 different ingredients. They had to think about how do I use this one vegetable multiple times? And it's perfect for the home kitchen, right? Like if you think about cooking at home for people who are not Chinese, they always say, oh, I'm so intimidated. Like there's so many ingredients. It's just like so difficult. And I feel like I need everything, every equipment. And I'm like, no, this book should not be intimidating. This book should be as accessible as it can be for, I think, a Chinese cookbook, because we all cooked with minimal equipment. In fact, my kitchen does not have all the bells and whistles. I live in like a condo with a very small kitchen. So I don't actually want a ton of stuff. I don't have the space for it. And so I made all my recipes in my own home kitchen. I was limited. I didn't have all the fancy stuff. And I thought about how people would be able to say, wow, I could actually do this no matter what circumstance they're in, whether they have a huge kitchen or a tiny one and they just want to be able to like try delicious Chinese food. They'll be able to make it.
I am so heartened to hear that because I am Chinese and I am one of those people. Like I have said this before. I think I said it to you when we talked for a little bit, but like I grew up eating restaurant Chinese food, not because I grew up in a restaurant, but because no one in my house cooked it. And everyone was like, let's just go out. You know, I grew up in San Francisco. And so in 10 minutes, you can get to any number of Chinese restaurants. And so we just did that. And so like to me, the idea of cooking Chinese food at home is so intimidating. It's becoming a little bit less so over the last few years in a few other people's cookbooks. But no, like looking through the recipes in this book, I was like, oh, this is like a House of Nanking staple that I could maybe make. Like I could attempt this. Like that's crazy to me because I legit was just like Chinese food restaurants only. Like that belongs in a restaurant kitchen. It shall never come to my door from me. Like there's no way. And now like seeing these dishes and these recipes in the book, I'm like, okay, we actually have these things. There's not that many ingredients. I think I could give this a shot, which seems crazy to me.
Yes. That's what I love to hear. I mean, there's literally some dishes in there where there's like two main ingredients and some seasoning. And you're kind of like, really? That's all there is to it? I'm like, yeah, that is.
That's wild. But like, I'm so into it.
You know, when I say everything is like purposeful, I feel like when I look at a lot of Chinese cookbooks, even I'm Chinese, right? And I cook Chinese food. And even I get intimidated sometimes too, because there are lots of processes that have to happen before a dish comes out. And so like, I think those are considered kind of like beauty books, like books that you appreciate, you read it and you look at it and you probably will never cook out of it.
You make like one condiment.
Yeah. And then, or maybe there might be one recipe that you're going to attempt. But for me, I feel like it's really important to, when it comes to bringing people together, bringing cultures together, that they can experience that food in their own home. And people really do want that. Like they want to be able to try to like change it up and cook some Chinese food. So I really want people to actually look at this book and be able to say, wow, I like now make a few of these dishes for my family and they enjoy it and I love it. Like that is kind of the purpose. I don't want you to just look at it and put it aside and be like, that's great, but I can't make any of that. Like the joy comes from someone saying, I always do this recipe now. It's so easy. My kids love it or my friends love it. I always entertain with it. I feel like that to me is success for my book. That already makes me happy that you've already taken one step further and said, I think I could attempt some of these.
Well, and actually, I think our kids would like scrappy noodles.
Yeah.
I think they would love it. It's like carb on carb.
Yeah. Who doesn't love that?
Did your dad try it when you made it? Scrappy noodles?
Yes. So
what did he think?
I mean, my dad says it didn't quite taste like what he remembered it to be because he's like, it's missing all of that pork fat. But he says this is like pretty close to like the memories of like the textures and at least like the soy and all of that. And he said it's a really good dish. Like he was pretty surprised that I took that story and made something with it first and foremost. And then just the idea of he's like, oh, wow, that's creative. You took like breadcrumbs and essentially recreated that dish for me as a kid.
Oh my God, there should be a cooking competition where it's like someone gives you a memory and then you have to create a dish around that. And then it's like, how close is the dish
to the memory that's described?
Yeah.
That would be fun.
That would be really fun. Who do we know? Let's make this happen. Growing up in the restaurant, growing up in San Francisco, working with your dad on this project, I can only imagine. But since part of what we do is talk about growing up, Asian in America, you growing up in the restaurant that you did, what was that like? Did you know how, I don't want to say different your childhood was, because I think we talk to a lot of restaurant kids and there's like a thread that goes through a lot of experiences. But like, what was that like for you also growing up in like a pretty famous restaurant?
I feel like the experience when you're in it, you don't think about it, right? I never thought that, oh, this is like really unusual, other than the fact that there was a part of that upbringing that I did sort of resent a little. It was just, I didn't feel like I had, the normal family dinners at night. My parents never came to any of my sports games. And I'm very short, but believe it or not, I was a varsity player in volleyball. I played back row. I won award, like all this stuff. But my parents would only like hear me say it, and they never like got to watch me play. So I had that kind of atypical upbringing in that I was the kid that was always at the restaurant, got home late, didn't have the family dinners. My dad would pick me up late, sometimes forget to pick me up, like that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as, this being like a really famous restaurant and what was that kind of life, it didn't ever really even register for me. Like we would walk through Chinatown and people would recognize my dad, right? And you would think, oh, my dad's famous. I never thought that. I just thought, yeah, like that's probably pretty normal, right? That we just walk and people would be like, hey, Mr. Fang, hey, I love your restaurant. Like all the cops knew him. It's just random people on the street. So I didn't think of my dad as being this famous person or even a badass chef or anything. I'm just like, oh, okay, well, yeah, it's a busy restaurant and, they always get home late and they don't care about me except the restaurant, So I had a typical like child, I guess, relationship that other kids might have. We always think our parents don't love us. Yeah, my kids say that now, and they're so spoiled. You don't love me.
Do you make your kids work in the restaurant? No.
My daughter, actually, we brought in a couple times. She actually really likes it. She likes being in there and interacting with people. I feel like she has a little bit of mini me in there. She's interested in cooking. I was always interested in cooking, always dissecting food and telling my dad, this is good for this reason and this dish is not good for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
So my daughter already has those tendencies. She also likes to tweak things. So we'll make something together and she'll taste it and tell me this needs a little bit more salt. Yeah. Or she's like, this doesn't taste right. Like, what should we add to it? Versus my son has no opinion. He's just like, yeah,
it's food.
Good. Yeah, it's food.
Are you getting a taste of what it must have been like to grow up with you?
I would say that I only maybe 10%. My daughter is kind of crazy and wild. I was very well behaved.
Only child.
Also, I think like, I grew up watching like my parents struggle and work really hard. What my kids are seeing now is we still work very hard, but in a different way.
Yeah.
And my husband works in front of a computer, which looks like he doesn't do anything to them, right? when they were literally, they were asked when we did the school interview, they're like, what does your mom do? And it's clear, right? They say, oh, well, she's a chef. She cooks food. She owns a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
But then when it came to, oh, what does your dad do? They're like, he like works in the house. And they're like, oh, like, what do you mean? And they're like fixes things, and like didn't know. And they just didn't know. So, but we are working, I promise, very hard. And so I think they live much more spoiled and like they don't have to see us work like in a physical manner. I got to see my parents work in physical manners, and in the kitchen they would get injured a lot, like crazy burns, cuts. I just remember there's always something going on. And so even that as a kid for me, it's kind of painful to see because, like a huge burn like that sends you to the hospital, a huge cut, hospital. It's like, yeah. So, and late hours, you can tell they're really tired.
Is that part of not just the physical part, but just the hours and stuff? Like, because in the book, and this is not a secret, but like you didn't work in restaurants out of college, right? You like sort of actively avoided it.
Yeah, because I loved, don't get me wrong, I loved growing up in the restaurant, the excitement. It was where I, was taught to like know how to interact with people and talk to people. Otherwise, I think I'd be actually quite shy and introverted. But I was forced to talk to customers, serve them. And I think through that, I discovered oh, wow, like I actually quite good at talking to people and I don't have to be that shy. And so I really loved that aspect. Everyone's having a good time there, having delicious food. Like, who doesn't want to be part of that kind of vibe? But I also didn't want my parents' life. I was like, okay, this is great and all, but every day of this, I don't get to hang out with friends. I see people all having a good time. Like, if I did what my parents did, I would not be able to do that. Holidays are super busy, so you don't get holidays. And plus, my parents, their place is open every single day except for like one day out of a year. There's really no time off. So I said, I'm going to do a 9-to-5 job. But also, my parents were very traditional. They opened the restaurant not really thinking or knowing that it was going to become like such an iconic place.
Mm-hmm.
They just thought, hey, their goal was one of these days, if we open this restaurant, make enough money, we can send our kids to private school, buy a house and a car, right? Like that was their dream
Mm-hmm.
goal. And they accomplished obviously more than that. So they wanted me to go be a doctor, go be a lawyer, very typical Chinese immigrant
Mm-hmm.
Ideals. In fact, when I decided that I wanted to come back and, work in the family business, we didn't really tell our relatives because it's kind of embarrassing. They sent me to USC, right? And it was very expensive tuition. I went and worked at Merrill Lynch. They were very proud of all of these accomplishments. And then, a couple years later, I'm like moving back into my parents' house, living with a curfew again. And it was just strange, right? Like my relatives were like, what's going on? So we kind of kept it a secret. And then until my dad was like, hey, you can't just work at the restaurant. There's like three's a crowd kind of thing. It's just like, we've established this. This is like overkill, right? For you to go through all this education and just work with us at this restaurant. So I said, well, we have to open a House of Nanking 2.0. Everybody's been asking us, open another location, come here, go to Vegas, go to here. And my dad's always been no, because he's a control freak, which is why he's still at both restaurants every single day.
Oh my God.
And so he's like, there's no chance he's going to open a restaurant with other people. Or if he were to do one on his own, then he would be away from the other one, right? So he needed that extra hand and extra hope. So I said, well, if we opened another restaurant, then he would be a part of that. And so my dad said, yes, we would partner together and open that other location, but it wouldn't be House of Nanking because we don't really want it to be the same thing. And it's not, because now there's me in this concept. And so it is the next generation of House of Nanking. And so that's why we ended up calling it Fang, because we felt like, well, this is a family business. And now it truly is like the whole family, right? Now the daughter is involved. So we called it Fang. But the Chinese name for the restaurant is very symbolic. We called it 大堂方厨. It's a play on words. So 大堂, in literal sense, when you hear it, means like large dining hall. 方厨, in the literal like kind of sound, is Fang chef or Chef Fang. But it's a play on words because Fang is our last name. Tang, which is part of the Da Tang, is actually my mom's last name. And so we took both last names of the family, and the sound actually worked perfectly with dining hall and Fang chef.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it truly is a full family affair.
Meant to be.
Yep.
Much like the location of the original one.
Yes.
I really like that story, by the way.
Yes. There's so many stories in this book. I think it's like hard to actually explain to people what's in this book, because obviously you look at it and you think, oh, it's a cookbook, right? House of Nanking cookbook, or it's a Chinese cookbook. But there's so many layers to this book, from like origin story to even like all the stories attached to each recipe. I wanted it to be a full experience. I wanted people to read it and laugh, possibly cry, like there should be all kinds of emotions. And maybe some of it should be like, like kind of, wow, that's surprising. Like I had no idea that that's how he came up with the name of the restaurant, which is like another really funny story, it's just when I wrote that, and I had a co-author, a ghostwriter, Emily Timberlake, who's fantastic. So I knew, I know how to put all these stories down, but I can't make it perfect. And I needed someone to kind of help me with the process too, because my dad didn't have to write a single thing. I spent like a full year just interviewing my dad and putting his memories down on paper, and then had to sit down and really like kind of regurgitate and think about how would my dad say it, right? Translate from his Chinese into like a story as if I was my dad. And then I needed the ghostwriter to be able to like finesse it, make it pretty. But when I told the House of Nanking like name story to her, she was like, oh my God, like, I can't believe that this famous name just kind of came on like yeah, why don't you just name it House of Nanking? Okay. Makes no sense though, because first of all, we don't serve any Nanking food. And even to this day, we have Chinese tourists that come and they're waiting in line to get in. And like the first thing they say is like, they start shouting out like Nanking specialties. We're like, oh, we don't have that. We don't have that. They're like, what? Aren't you a Nanking restaurant? And we're like,
you're like, actually,
about that. We're not. And they're like, where are you from? We're like, Shanghai. Shanghai? Well, why don't you have traditional Shanghainese dishes in here? We're like, well, you see, our restaurant's a little different. We don't have any of those specific dishes, but there's a little bit of those flavors in the dishes. And I thought, oh, we have to like tell people in a way that they can understand. So people may not understand the nuances of, say, like Nanking or Shanghai. So I basically told Emily, I was like, just think of it as like naming your restaurant Pizzeria de Napolitano, except you serve Chicago pizza, right? People be like, where's the Napolitano pizza? Oh, we don't serve that. We're Chicago style pizza. It just makes no sense.
Oh, I love that so much. I think like what's so interesting to me about the restaurant itself, and this kind of goes to like the location story, is like you're not in the heart of Chinatown. You don't serve the food that's in the name. Like nothing about it really makes sense.
No.
But it's such an icon and the food is so good and everyone like it's, you know, in a lot of ways, it's the antithesis of like all of the Chinese restaurants that I went to as a kid, which was just like in the Sunset or in the Richmond and like a big round table. Yeah. Lazy Susan, like all of that I grew up with. And so I actually didn't go to House of Nanking until I was an adult. And I was just like, what? Okay. Yeah. Like I knew about it and I was just like, we'll see what happens. And like, it's great. I loved it. But I was just like, this is so different than my childhood Chinese upbringing.
I mean, same thing for us, right? Like, other than our experience inside House of Nanking, right, working in there, any meal that we ever had out, and which we did a lot, like we would bring my grandparents, my dad would like try to take them for dinner and lunch sometimes in between breaks, and all the other restaurants were kind of the same, right? You'd like all the menus felt the same, and the setup with the round tablecloths, the Lazy Susan, the really heavy like teacups, you know, and like the beige chopsticks is just like always the same. And so I feel like it was just very fateful that my parents, even though they knew nothing coming here, right? It's not like they had a business plan or this is what we're going to do. It was kind of just true immigrant survival skills, like just stumbling through and kind of like figuring things out. And they just got really lucky with, and my dad was observant, right? He did think to himself, hey, when he first opened, I'm going to do what I know, which is cook Shanghainese food, right? He wasn't quite exposed enough to Western food at that point yet. But as you read in the book, there are, I think, like 10 people who were Shanghainese in the city at that time, and we knew all of them. They were like relatives. So if we only served that, like the city was not ready to have Shanghainese food yet. It was still too exotic, right? Like we had fake goose and all that. It was just like people wouldn't be able to handle it yet. Not ready. And so he's like, okay, I have to change it. He just started thinking, you know, what do people like here? He got inspired by flavors here. You know, one of our most famous sauces, the peanut sauce, came because my dad had never tasted peanut butter before. It's always sesame back in China. Peanut butter is like a luxury item over there. It wasn't until he came here when I think it was like Jiffy or Skippy, you know, like the old school peanut butter jars. When he tasted it, he was like, oh my God, this is like the most delicious thing ever. And he thought I should make a sauce with it. So it took him just spending more time being in San Francisco, experiencing American culture for him to understand, okay, so like food is different here and I can't do like the uber traditional stuff. And then it was kind of experimenting, right? once he saw, oh, people kind of like it, then let's kind of keep doing that. And even within our family, I think we've always just been very creative. And you'll see through the recipes, the stories about my dad's mom, like she was also always just like kind of changing things up, like didn't want to really do things quite the traditional way. And was honestly like one of the best cooks in our whole family, just really inventive. And that's why I think our food at Fang and House of Nanking just tastes a little different, right? Everything is just a little different because our experiences is different. We've got people from Shanghai, we've got Cantonese influence, we've got Hunan influence, and then us living here, everything's kind of random hodgepodge put together. And we cook authentically through that.
I love it. It's so great. Sam, I would like to turn it over to you because as you were looking through this cookbook, you kept saying, my mom makes that. My mom makes that. I used to eat that. And I really love that because, again, I did not expect that a cookbook named after a very iconic restaurant, I would open up and see recipes that my mother-in-law makes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that you talk about how like it's simple dishes, not too many ingredients, I think that kind of makes sense looking back at like how my mom used to cook, because she used to have to cook for, a family of 4 every night, and she would just, cook Chinese food every night. And it makes sense that it's not too overcomplicated and something that you could whip up pretty quickly, and like you could use the same 2 or 3 proteins or ingredients, and then you could just have a varied meal every night. And it just definitely reminded me of my childhood and growing up and all the dishes that my mom made. So yeah.
Yay. I mean, that is a big part of what I wanted to share. And that also came from the fact that I've had like not only customers with people through social media and also just friends, right? Friends who are like me from my generation who will sometimes see the stuff that I cook for my kids and I post it and they'll be like, gosh, like, can you send me the recipe for that? Like my mom used to make that or my aunt used to make that. And as you know, in Asian culture or Chinese culture, we just don't share recipes for some reason. We don't write things down. Any kind of like, oh, how do you make it? It's like a thumb of ginger and a little of that, And so a lot of my friends who they dream of those things, but one, they don't have the time. And they'll be like, oh, sometimes they'll be like, the relatives are gone. No one passed these recipes down. And so, yes, you can find it through the internet and all that, but all that takes work, right? Which one's better? Like, which one was like the one that my mom made, right? Everyone has their own version. And so at the very least, this is like a collection of recipes that, well, it did come from House of Nanking. So there's some kind of legitimacy behind this. But also, these are things that we literally just cook for our family. I do that for my kids. I make it a point to cook very traditional food that I grew up eating Monday through Thursday. There's like no exception to it. Like there's always the soup making for them, some kind of protein that's either steamed or braised, and then a traditional Chinese vegetable like with garlic and ginger. Just keep it simple and routine. And I love being able to do that and pass that down to them. And I think that it would be a shame for generations like ours to kind of like time can pass by so quickly before you're like, oh, all the people who knew how to make this are not around anymore to share it. So that kind of passing down to your kids, you can do that now, right? Like take these recipes and cook for them. And it's really healthy. Here's the other thing. I think sometimes we get this bad rap that, oh, Chinese food is not that healthy. If you look at it, most of those family recipes are incredibly healthy and nourishing. Everything is about nourishment and love for the family, taking care of them. And there's something so beautiful about that. And I feel like that has to be shared. And so it makes me happy to hear you say, oh, like those are all dishes, that my mom used to make me. And I remember that. And that is like a huge part of this book that I wanted to convey. It's not just House of Nanking recipes. There's really very meaningful dishes in there that we all grew up with.
Another thing I noticed, I think you mentioned in the introduction, you're like, what is the House of Nanking style? And that's a little bit complicated. It's like Cantonese, Shanghainese, or a mishmash of things. And I realized that my mom did that too. Like she didn't cook in any particular style. She was actually very experimental and whatever she kind of tried outside, she would kind of try and recreate at home. I remember one time, like after having Japanese food, she tried to make like a sushi thing, but it was like a thing that she cooked, but wrapped in like a seaweed thing, like not exactly the same, but like inspired. So it's very interesting to see how that sort of mentality and flexibleness is cultural in a way,
Yeah. I mean, like I feel like most everybody in their kitchens, if you have parents who are immigrants and they're at a new place, they're all adapting, right? Yeah. They're taking the ingredients that they have access to and they're kind of changing it up, or they go eat somewhere and this is kind of nice. I'll kind of pull those influences around and do a little of my own mishmash. And that's like the beauty, right? That's the beauty of having that flexibility and being able to do that so that it's like your own. Oh, it's my family's own, cooked sushi, right? Like that makes for really good, memorable recipes. Like that section, I knew I had to do that and put a whole piece in there because a lot of times people will say, and I think sometimes Chinese people especially can be kind of tough on other Chinese people. They'll say, oh,
you don't say.
Yeah, like this is not authentic. Like what kind of Chinese food is this? It's got to be part of a cuisine. And you're like, well, it doesn't. And people would try to call it like Pan-Asian or fusion. And we're like, well, it's not really any of that. So I really wanted to create a page to kind of explain, what is it exactly and why does it taste different? Why do we call it our own? We call it kind of like Fang cuisine. In fact, customers will say, go to Fang and not realize that it's affiliated to House of Nanking. And they'll eat it and they'll be like, this kind of reminds me of House of Nanking. And then, all they have to do is kind of look around. There's like House of Nanking stuff, but they'll tell us, they'll be like, I didn't realize you guys were affiliated with House of Nanking. And we'll be like, yeah. And they're, oh, well, we're big fans of House of Nanking. And we happen to be on this side, came in. And when we tasted the food, we thought House of Nanking. So there's a distinctive kind of flavor. There's something distinctive about what we do that tastes different from any other Chinese restaurant. And I love that because people will come in and literally say, oh, I'm from Europe. I've had like a lot of Chinese food and this is like the best wonton soup I've ever had. I've had a lot of wonton soup, but I've never had wonton soup like this. People will say, oh, I've had egg rolls, but not like this. And so it's familiar, but like with a little twist.
One thing I've noticed when I first visited House of Nanking and like every subsequent visit is like the branding. Like it's bold, but also colorful, but not precious, but still very straightforward.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
So again, I feel like this was just sort of, I wouldn't say we stumbled upon this. So my dad at the time, when it came to designing the signage, and they don't know anything about like logos, like that business term of, oh, we need a logo. That doesn't exist, right? At the time they had a design for a business card. That was very important at that time. And the business card that he designed, which I would say it would be considered the logo, was not the House of Nanking one that you see that's on the signage now. What he did was he sketched a duck with a sign that said House of Nanking on there because I used to have the Scholastic readers ordering books and I would order things. He'd like sift through them and he saw some duck cartoon and decided to kind of sketch like that. My dad did it himself. He didn't hire anybody. And that was our first card. Our card was like beige with a little gold in it. Very like classic, demure kind of thing. And that's because, at the time, I feel like all Chinese restaurants, and my dad had said this, that everybody had like that kind of gold, right? Like the gold signage, like, or red. It was very typical. And so he looked at all the signage that was like outside. And he's like, well, I need to stand out. And so he decided to do a multicolored sign. And so now you've got two different logos that don't even match, right? And it's clear. And obviously the multicolor one is the winner because I don't know how long those business cards lasted. It wasn't very long before my dad ended up switching it to the multicolored block. And it really stood out. And the signage people who are Chinese initially would not make it. They're just like, are you sure you want that? He's like, I've never done any Chinese restaurant sign that's multicolored like that, right? They're trying to convince him that you should probably follow like what other people are doing. The gold and put the Chinese
lucky colors.
Yeah, and he's like, no, just trust me. Well, let's just do that. And it was him thinking like, okay, I want to stand out. And he's like, let's just put rainbow colors. Maybe that was inspired by my Scholastic readers. I don't know. But he came up with that. And now I feel like such a recognizable logo. You know, like we made hoodies with that whole logo thing. It's super popular. People make these bootleg merchandise off of our logo.
For real?
Oh, yeah. So like a couple of years back, it was like getting to be kind of too ridiculous. People were making their own T-shirts, like copying ours that we had to actually get lawyers to like try to take down some of these other sites. But it's popular. Even just a couple of weeks ago, my friend was in LA at a comic book store and she took a picture of a guy with a baseball cap with our House of Nanking logo. And I was like, man, I don't even remember when we made that. And it's been really long ago. And she's like, oh, no, the guy said it was a bootleg. I was like, oh, still. But it's just like so fun. And another funny story, I don't even know if I put this in the book, but first we did the T-shirts because you know, we're like, okay, this logo is recognizable. The employees need something that's uniform. And so we decided to do the T-shirts. And people were like, oh my God, we want to buy it. It's like, cool. We want to be able to wear it. Then people waiting in line, it's really cold. And a lot of tourists don't realize how cold San Francisco is.
Correct.
And we felt so bad. Right. And they're just like, and if it's late, there's nowhere to go buy like hoodies and things like that. So I was like, hey, we should like make a House of Nanking hoodie then. Right.
Public service.
Yeah. And I'm like, but we should make it the same. So I actually had my middle school best friend do it. Everything is like, you know, low key, frugal manner.
Scrappy noodles.
Yeah, scrappy noodles. And so we're not going to spend the money to hire a professional.
No.
So my middle school friend always won all these art contests. Right. She's an insane artist. And so I was like, hey, that we were in college. I'm like, will you like help us design? And she's like, sure. And so that hoodie became like so popular. We sell out like every couple of months. We're always like ordering more. And so, yeah, it's like it ended up being the perfect logo without my dad even knowing what a logo means. So.
Well, hearing you describe the philosophy behind the restaurant, it really kind of translates into the logo. And the logo is reflective of the restaurant itself. So I think it works really, really well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It just really stands out, you know, like all the colors.
All of these very like accidental things that seem not at all an accident.
Yeah.
Very much fated.
That's why I feel we really wanted to share it with people, you know, because then people don't know. But once they read it, I think they'll, one, be surprised and then have even more appreciation for it. But yeah, it's just really neat how all these little things that didn't really make sense ended up being the perfect thing. Very fateful. Us being Chinese and Asian, that's all we think about is like fate, right? We're like, oh, this is meant to be, this is not meant to be kind of thing. I mean, that's how we pick the location, feng shui.
Yeah.
All that, yeah. So you mentioned something really insightful. You're like, House of Nanking is not located in like the best part of Chinatown. It's on the border. And when it came to finding the location, it was my mom's dad who was like, oh, this is the spot. And my dad was like, this is on the border, right? This is not a good location. In fact, like people
practically North Beach.
Yeah. People get confused. They're going to say, well, that's like North Beach and Jackson Square or Phi Dai. And there wasn't as much happening down there. Everything was like on Grant and Stockton, but it ended up being, again, like the perfect location. We were right across from Francis Ford Coppola, like perfect neighbors. And he was like a huge, huge customer of ours, a huge fan of ours. So everything always kind of works out just right.
You mentioned interviewing your dad for a year and then having to sort of like transcribe and translate his stories. What has it been like once the book has been sort of produced and you're kind of in this phase now? What's it been like to like have these conversations with your dad and your mom too, of sort of reviewing all of the attention and also just like all of the stories that went into it?
Well, I have not reviewed it with my mom yet.
Oh.
I just got my advance copy last week. And so
she didn't see a PDF?
No.
Parts of it are in Chinese, which I love.
No. In fact, my dad didn't see the PDFs either. This will also come as a surprise. My dad actually did not see any part of the book through this entire process. I did not even share like the stories. I wanted the whole book to be like a surprise to him, even though obviously we're working on it together. But the part that he worked on was that we were able to talk to each other, have him tell me the memories, I record it down and I put it into a book versus having him have to work as well. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't want to burden him with, like writing or feeling like he needed to put time into putting this book together. I wanted him to just tell me everything and then for me to put it into a book and present it to him. And in the very back of the book, which is, I think the most important page of this entire cookbook, it's the acknowledgement page, which I had written in Chinese as well. And I did the intro in Chinese because I knew for my parents, like, yes, they can understand English, but like a lot of the meaningful stuff can be lost through translation when they read English. And so I said, okay, that needs to be in Chinese because I want them to actually physically pick up the book and read it for the first time and read those pages, because then they'll understand the book is really a gift to them, right? It's capturing the legacy. It's capturing all the hard work. It's capturing, everything that went into putting a House of Nanking together. It's an ode. It's a thank you to also like all parents who have essentially done the same thing as what my parents have done. And I think culturally, we have trouble kind of sharing these things vocally because we were just never taught to be emotional. We're never taught to show appreciation through words. We do it through action, right? But our action is like, yelling at each other for like not wearing a jacket in the cold, not taking your medicine, like our love is really weird, right? Like my husband's always like, there's so much yelling. I was like, don't worry, we're not fighting. Right? We're just arguing about why she didn't take her medicine or something. It's all for love. But, and my dad is like so intense too. If you see him at the restaurant, it's just like hard for me to be like, oh, Dad, let's talk about our emotions, right? Like, I'm not even good at that. I'm terrible at that. I was not raised to do that. And so I wanted to put those words of acknowledgement in there as my way of saying it because I don't know how to say it in person. Then I'm like, well, I might as well do it in book form. And so that's why those parts are in Chinese. And I made sure that my dad didn't see any of it until the book came out. So last week I gave him first look. And he got to read the book, and it was very nerve-wracking because, Asian dad,
I bet,
right? He could be like, "Why is this recipe in here?" Like, anything, right? I don't know about this. And then I saved that acknowledgement as like the last piece for him to read. And then, I could tell, like when he read it, my dad was like, "Wow, he didn't cry."
Of course not.
But I could tell he did touch his eyes like a couple of times, didn't cry, but I think he was he said, wow, he's like, after he read that, he said, a lot of people are going to want to read this book. He's like, you really have everything in this book. He's like, you've got this like emotional aspect to it that, will help people really relate. And he's like, this is a really good book. And I was like, okay. Got approved.
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking about it. I'm like,
that's high praise.
That's nerve-wracking, right? I'm like, how is my dad going to like react to this page? Is this too much?
Too many feelings?
Yeah, too many feelings. What am I going to do here? I was on my phone because I was like, I don't want to cry. So I was just like, okay, Instagram. Somebody give me some Instagram. So I'm just like, don't look at him. Just wait till he finishes. So then now I'm going to find like the right time to bring this to my mom to reveal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kathy, that's really beautiful. That's such a perfect place. I mean, I want to keep talking to you about this forever, but that's a perfect place for us to end. This book is gorgeous. When does it come out and where can people find it?
It comes out September 30th. They can find it online. On Instagram, we have like a full link to show all the different places that they can buy it from. But they can also just go onto Amazon, type House of Nanking cookbook. Pre-ordering is really, really important when it comes to book sales these days. I feel I have very lofty goals for this book. I would love for this book to win an award or get bestseller, but bestseller is really, really difficult. Usually it's like huge social media chefs these days or celebrity chefs that get that kind of title. Pretty rarely, I think, do books like these make it to that title. But I think it doesn't hurt to dream and to just tell everyone and anyone that you know to support this book, because it's not just a cookbook. It really is a way of us showing appreciation, obviously, for all our customers, but really like that first step of saying thank you to like all immigrants and parents, that immigrant journey. What does it take? All that grit, not just my parents, but the people who work in the restaurant, especially now with what's happening with immigrants. Like, it's a really like nice reminder of what we've contributed and added to the city, to the country, but in a very friendly manner, right? This non-political manner. It's really like in the best way. Food is the easiest way to bridge people together and cultures. So encourage people to pre-order. I also have 2 book events coming up. There's going to be one at Omnivore on September 29th, where I'll be doing a little author speaking series about the book. And then I'm doing another one at Book Passage at the Ferry Building on the 27th. So these are all leading up to the book release that people can go to. And we're also going to do another one at Asian Art Museum. So there's like upcoming stuff too.
Amazing. I know that bestseller list is hard to crack, and I know that awards are scarce sometimes, but everything else has worked out quite well and been quite fortuitous for House of Nanking. I don't see why this should be any different.
Well, fingers crossed. Oh, and one more thing I want to add. When I was doing the book proposal for this book, they had us put together this whole business doc, right? It's basically like your selling pitch to them. And we had to do research on types of books that have been produced that are like this. And I found out a really interesting statistic that was kind of shocking. And is that these types of books that are immigrant written, legacy family businesses, small, right? Not like huge companies or whatnot. Books like these are maybe like a handful. There's very, very few. And actually even restaurants like ours these days, these just multi-generational small businesses, there may be one of them or 2 of them, like across the country, they're kind of slowly dying. They're like going away. And so 1, this is already a unique sort of institution, but 2, just even having a book that's written in that manner, immigrant voice and story. Generally, they don't want to share these stories, like my dad, right? Like they don't want to share their recipes, and all of it actually over time, it disappears, right? With the restaurant. And so to have a book like that on that status is something that I think can make all of us feel very proud. Not just my family, right? Like for people who've done the same thing, who can read this and say, this is us, right? This is our family. This is what my parents did or my grandparents did. And look, our story can actually make it to bestseller. Our story can actually win awards and like compete with all the other fancy chefs and fancy celebrity social media people. Like I think that can really make a big difference in encouraging us to do more of that.
I love that. When we started this podcast, part of what I wanted ahead of this was like a book like yours, not necessarily from just our family, but the idea of curating lots of people's family recipes so that the next generation or someone without family or someone who had lost connection could pick up a book like yours or a collection of books like yours and say like, oh, this is what I can build from for myself now.
Yeah.
And these are stories that I can relate to. They're not necessarily my dishes, but they're my stories, or they're not necessarily my stories, but they're my dishes.
Yeah.
And I think that this book does so much of that. Like there is so much that I would have never known, right? Like just going to the restaurant. And it's both reflective of a lot of what I know and knew about San Francisco and also things that I had never considered, even though I grew up here. And so I don't know, it's just think it's really wonderful and I love it. And I wish it nothing but wild success because it is gorgeous. So listeners, pre-order the book.
Lots.
Cook from it. Lots of them.
Lots of.
But cook from it. And I'm really looking forward to cooking from it, actually, because I do feel, and I've said this about a couple of other cookbooks, but like this feels accessible to me and it feels like something that I could over time tackle and it could become part of our family too. So I'm very excited.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. It really means a lot for me and my family for us to be able to just talk about this book because we're excited about it. So,
well, we're glad to have you and come back anytime to talk about more dishes.
Yeah.
Listeners, thank you so much. There is no recipe. There is only a whole cookbook of recipes.
Yes.
Go get House of Nanking, the cookbook. It is gorgeous, truly. Find Kathy on Instagram. Go to all her book events. And if you want to find us, you can find us at worstqualitycrab.com. You can find us on Instagram at worstqualitycrab, or you can email us at worstqualitycrabpod@gmail.com. And until next time, I hope everyone is cooking something delicious, preferably from this cookbook. And we'll talk to everybody soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.